the music, and Amel is the host today, so she'll take it away from there.
Yeah, you guys, I'm experiencing a lag right now in Riverside. Can you, hello?
Is it
No.
still
Um,
there?
you want to hop out and hop back in?
Yeah, I'm gonna hop out and hop back in.
Okay, go for it. Check and see if it took us live. If so, hello out there in YouTube land. We are live but pre-show, so hang out and chill. If you're on the YouTube channel and you wonder where the chat is, we chat in the changelog community Slack, which is totally free to hop into. There's a JS party channel. Here comes Amel back in, and you can chat there. That's why the chat in YouTube is turned off, because we just don't monitor that one. And if you're on our channel, what's up? And we're gonna send out some tweets and stuff here. How are we doing now, Amel?
We're doing good. If I sound good,
Wait,
we are.
you do.
What episode number is this?
This is episode number 198.
Cool.
Sorry, I can't tweet and talk at the same time, but I can play the song and then let Amel
I
start
can kick it
talking
off.
while I tweet. Yeah, here we go. Let's get this set up.
What decentralization future?
The
Actual
decentralized
name.
future.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we might rename it later, but
Yeah.
it was the working title was the decentralized future. Okay, you ready for the theme song?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Party time. That's loud.
Hi, everyone. We are so excited for today's episode. This is a hot topic, y'all. So everybody get your popcorn, get comfortable. We're gonna dive in pretty deep. We have a very special guest with us today, Nader Dabit. Hello, Nader. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited for the convo today.
Yeah, I should say I'm probably gonna turn off my Twitter mentions. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, we'll keep it positive. And with me today is co-hosting is Jerod.
Hi, and you know what? I brought some sunglasses. I thought maybe I'd throw these on since this is such a cool topic, the future,
Oh,
right?
oh my God, Jerod, those glasses
Nice.
look amazing on you. I think you should just always wear them. You should be like those rappers
So,
that like wear sunglasses indoors. Yeah,
okay,
yeah, looks good.
I'm
Good
sold.
luck.
I'll leave them on.
Yeah, good luck, good luck. So anyway, so we've invited Nader today to talk about the decentralized future, Web3 and crypto and all the like buzzwords that kind of go into that space. A great guest because he, like many of our listeners, is a has a web development background and kind of really made a very intentional pivot into kind of Ethereum development over the past year, maybe, Nader? It's been a year
Yeah,
now.
it was 6 months
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, 6 months, not even. All right, Nader, why don't you give us your backstory? So we don't have time to get into your full origin story. There's a great
Yeah,
changelog episode that was on in 2008 that we'll link in the notes so you can uh, Nader's background. But we're going to start at AWS. So you were a lead or something at AWS, and then you were like, I'm done. Tell us
yeah.
about that.
I was at AWS for over 3 years, like almost 3.5 years, and I was leading the developer relations team for front end web and mobile, which is, AWS has like partitioned different groups that work on things. So there's like the Alexa group, there's the serverless group, and I was on the front end web and mobile. So we were kind of building out SDKs for web and mobile developers as well as tooling and stuff. So yeah, I was leading the developer relations team or developer advocacy team for the last year, a little over a year. And before that, I was just a developer advocate for previous 2 years. And yeah, so I was there for a little over 3 years. I would say learned the most of any role I've ever had while I was at AWS. I made some really great connections and friends, and it was just a really good experience overall. I would not go back and change anything about it. But kind of like while being there, I would say for the last year or so, I did become a little bit bored and just uninspired, I would say a little bit by my day-to-day work. And this was also during COVID, so it's kind of hard to tell exactly the root cause. And honestly, we're lucky to be able to even decide, hey, I'm bored, let me try something new. But that's kind of the way I felt. I wanted to try something new. So I started, just keeping my eyes out for opportunities over the course of that year. I was interviewing, I was talking to people, I was reading, and I was learning, and I was just looking for the next thing that kind of sparked that original spark that I had, when I first started becoming a developer, and really when I joined AWS, that I had that feeling when I was working on serverless stuff, and I still like serverless stuff. It's really interesting to me, but it doesn't like make me want to wake up and be excited and happy for my day. It's kind of like looking for that thing. And I had a lot of really great opportunities that started coming around because of, just being a developer for 10 years, and having that experience. You start landing some good opportunities. And one of the areas that I started exploring was like crypto and Web3. I had some really great opportunities that were like senior and principal level within AWS, and then outside of AWS that actually paid like twice as much as what I'm ultimately took in the Web3 space. But they weren't things that I was excited to go do. So,
Yeah, no magic
while I'm
feeling.
interviewing and all this stuff, what's that?
No magic feeling, right? That,
Yeah, no magic
yeah,
feeling, and again, like how fortunate, like was I to even be able to say something like that, right? So I recognize all that stuff, but I was looking for something, the next thing to excite me. So I've been speculating in this, and as an investor in crypto since like 2015. So buying and selling, Bitcoin back in the day, and then other things more recently. And one of the ones that I looked into was something called the Graph Protocol, and it was the first time I kind of looked past the token as an investment and tried to understand why it was there and why people were buying it and using it. And when I started kind of looking into that project, the first thing I realized was that they were using GraphQL, and that was kind of like a big part of it. And that was really the first big eye-opening moment for me as a developer, when I started realizing that these tokens and these crypto economic protocols were actually there for something other than speculation. Because honestly, at that point, even 6, 7 months ago, I didn't understand how smart contracts work. I didn't understand anything past just the buying and selling. So I started diving into like why they use GraphQL, and that kind of took me down what a lot of people call this rabbit hole of the entire ecosystem in Web3 and all of the people, all of the communities, all of the projects, and all of the stuff happening, conferences, all types of stuff. And I became really, really fascinated, and I became really excited, and I wanted to continue doing research. So I started reading, and I started buying books, and really getting, like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like it was like one of those things like, oh, this is freaking cool. People are actually, you know, not just the reason that these things have become popular isn't just because it's like another currency, but there's actually there's other stuff. And when you start like peeling back the layers and seeing all the stuff, it really spoke to me as an engineer, because the problems that they were solving and the stuff that they were doing seemed so much more fun and interesting than anything I'd worked on, really in my career ever. So yeah, at that point, I did start like considering like, what if I wanted to make a move into this industry? But it wasn't really anything I took too seriously, it because of a bunch of different reasons, but one of those being it just seemed so risky to me to turn down like a $500,000 type of opportunity that I had on the table to maybe join an industry that I knew nothing about, and like I had zero experience. Like, why would anyone hire me anyway? And if I did, like, would I be successful? So yeah, it was that's kind of where I was maybe a couple of weeks before I ultimately tried to get into the role I'm in now. So that's kind of hopefully like, an overview of how I decided to even consider this area.
Mm. You said they were solving problems that were more exciting. Can you give us some examples of what problems were being solved in this industry specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, at AWS and really within the web community for the past few years, we were doing some really, really great stuff around improving the developer experience and improving the user experience when you're, in the area that I was in was like Jamstack and also, mobile development. But like we seem to be solving kind of the same problems like over and over. We had WordPress as a CMS like 10, 15 years ago, whatever. The big rage at the time was like Jamstack and CMSs. So I felt like, we're basically rebuilding a CMS over and over and over. And that was kind of like one of the really hot things that I felt like was cool and stuff, but it wasn't like revolutionary and it wasn't that huge of a deal. We were doing fun stuff and cool stuff, but it wasn't like anything that was like brand new.
Hmm.
Whereas I feel like some of the stuff in the Web3 space that I'll talk about just a moment was kind of brand new. But like, yeah, I was just getting tired of like seeing and even creating myself like, oh, here's how you create a blog using this stack. We've created like millions of blog posts about how to create a blog. There's thousands of ways to do it. It just wasn't that interesting to me, you know? So that
Hmm.
I would say that's kind of the feeling that I was having around some of the stuff we were doing. Um, you know, Databases are cool, but like we're just rebuilding the same types of databases over and over. And people, you really have to go into details to even understand the differences between this new SQL database versus the other dozen SQL databases that were already out there. Um, and I think when I started looking into um, Web3 and crypto, I started seeing that there were like a multitude of different interesting problems that some of them were in the process of being solved, some of them were theoretical and they haven't been solved yet, and some of them kind of have been solved and they're iterating on new improved ways of making that technology better. But really, the captivating thing I think around how um, digital currency and how tokens and how tokenomics work and how they can incentivize ways of collaboration and also enable people to make money in places in the world maybe that they had seen a lot less opportunity in the past. Um, the types of applications that people were building were kind of interesting. So I would say like a really great example of something that is concrete that people can go and kind of look at and see the possible future repercussions of that is happening like almost as we speak is this game called Axie Infinity. This is kind of like a game that put into practice a lot of the Web3 ideas. And Axie Infinity is kind of a game that is revolutionary in a few different ways. And before I talk about Axie, let me talk about Fortnite. I have a couple of kids, and one of their favorite games is Fortnite. Fortnite was really also kind of revolutionary. They gave the game away for free, and it was kind of like the first, I would say, big hit video game like on Nintendo or one of those platforms that people were able to get for free that blew up like and made a lot of money. So how did they make the money? Well, they enabled digital currency. They enabled also skins, which were clothing and stuff like that. So those two things were huge. And I spend now a couple of $100 a year on Fortnite for my kids. Where in the past we would have paid like $80 for a game, and you never would have paid again, right? That was like the old way. The new way is like, oh, you're paying like every month or every year money for your kids to play these games because
I like the
they've
old way
now
better.
enabled like payments within the game. But what is the problem with that? Well, I wouldn't say that this is a problem. It's more of like a limitation. The limitation there is like when the kid outgrows the game, then you've now dumped $1,000 into this thing and nothing has come of it. Maybe they've had a great time. Maybe that's enough. That is a good thing, right? Maybe having fun is good enough. But what if instead people can actually take the value that they've put into the platform and maybe get some of their return of their investment back, or maybe they can give it away to someone else and have them use it and have a really really easy way to do that. So Axie Infinity kind of took those ideas of what Fortnite has along with some of the Web3 ideas, and they've built this game that allows players to earn in-game currency, and they can also buy it, but they can also resell that on a liquid market. So like as you play the game, you're getting paid essentially to play, and it's not a ton of money for maybe someone like a software engineer, but for people in other parts of the world, they're actually able to quit their jobs and they're making more money, like sometimes orders of magnitude more money, just playing this game than they would be able to working in like a local area using their skill set. So when I started like, learning about stuff like this is kind of an example that it kind of excites me, just because it's so kind of revolutionary, and applying these same ideas in a bunch of different areas maybe in the future is also really exciting. And I think the idea is like having the combination of the technology to make it happen, the actual implementation that's successful, and then the order, like all of the different areas that have yet to be applied is very exciting, because that means we're kind of still early like in on making these changes, but we can, see that they are actually things that applied and they can be successful. So yeah, that's kind of like, I don't know if I went too far into a tangent there.
No, I think
It's a
that
good
was a
example.
good and yeah, good example. I think a good case for some of these ideas, and I'll be able to share and reuse, you know. But kind of back to the what a little bit. So you kind
Mhm.
of quickly, I 100% agree with you. Web developers, we are reinventing ways, and it is a point of huge frustration for me. But that's a topic for another show. We'll have to do that another time, Nader. But to kind of bring this conversation back, so you are really, I think, a person who is very prominent in the educator community, and you kind of are really big on teaching and like kind of sharing. Like it's so funny, a fish swims, I don't know, a bird flies, Nader teaches, gets into this crypto space. Nader is new to the thing. Nader does is like write a full guide on like Ethereum development, and it goes crazy viral. So what was that like, and inspired you to do that, and then what's
Yeah.
life been?
I guess taking a couple of steps back from that, going back to when I did decide to kind of like actually take the plunge and take a role here. I had been investigating, a handful of protocols, and I ended up coming back. There was maybe a half dozen or so projects that I was like, okay, I would love to work with these people, based on my, initial investigation and stuff. But the one that I ended up coming back to was the Graph protocol, mainly because I was like, if anyone's going to hire me, I have a ton of GraphQL experience, so maybe they would be like, okay, like let's give this person a shot. So I ended up applying and, getting the interview, and throughout the interview process, I just felt like I was not good enough and I wasn't experienced enough, because a lot of the stuff they were talking about was way over my head. Um, just because it's a completely different area that I've ever, been in again. But ultimately, I met the team. We talked about it. I learned that almost everyone coming into this space today has zero experience in this space. Why? Mainly because it's growing so rapidly that there is no like existing pool of talent to draw from. So they have to draw from the Web2 world, or even just other parts of the world. Anyone that has applicable experience, community experience, other stuff. So I ended up interviewing, getting an offer, and like taking the role. And it was a very, very um, at the time, a kind of scary decision for me, because I did take about half as much money as I could have taken somewhere else. And I am joining a team that literally just created this new company about a month before I started interviewing. So brand new company, less money, industry I never had been a part of. It was all brand new to me, and rolling the dice almost, you could say. Um, my mom and dad like thought I was crazy. My wife is 100% like always behind me there, so at least I have that going for me. But like when but even after I took the offer, I was still worried about how people in my network were gonna basically, you know, react to this, because I've been so heavily in other communities before. This is such a big shift. But I knew that like the things that were interesting to me had to be interesting to other people, because it just, how could they not be when people actually maybe understand some of this stuff? That's, at least that's where I was thinking. So the first glimpse that I got that people would be interested is just, I sent out a tweet that was saying, "Hey, I'm writing this guide for building out full stack Ethereum app." I forgot exactly the way I had kind of phrased it, but it got way more attention than I ever expected it to be. So that was my first glimpse at kind of like demand or the interest in this type of content ever from my perspective in my network. So I
Yeah,
thought that
well,
was really cool to
actually,
see. Yeah,
if we could just double click on that a little bit. So what I find really in general is, unlike the are like 24/7 and then they're global. So it's like I just feel like that alone just creates a massive scale. Like, for anything, if you're having a conference or webinar or whatever, it's like all your audience just like 100x's or 1000x's like and I'm just curious like if that's like kind of a little bit of as well, like just you had a much wider group that were all of a sudden interested in what you had to say.
yeah. I don't even. It was just definitely not expected, but it was very welcome. And I was just because I was really worried about, okay, what if I go into this and it's not what I thought it was, or maybe I go into this and like no one, really, I'm able to not really network and create the relationships or really keep the relationships that I had in the past. That I really cared about, and I always wanted to continue building those relationships. But yeah, it is a 24/7 market, but it's also an accessible market that doesn't need anyone to tell you that you can participate or you can't participate. I think one of the biggest things that is interesting to me around any I would say revolutionary technology is that it really is something that abstracts away something that in the past needed a lot more time, effort, work, and people to kind of make work. And to me, what you're seeing now, especially if you look at stuff like decentralized finance, where you have these multi-billion-dollar protocols that are doing the same work with a dozen or 2 dozen people that in the past would have taken orders of magnitude more people. So we're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of people within a traditional banking system to operate the types of operations, combining both software and physical locations and all this other stuff that are now being done and abstracted away by teams of much smaller people. So that really excited me. The fact that anyone in the entire world can create a wallet and get paid really excited me. One of the things that really excited me really at first, honestly, was also the idea of stable coins. Because when I knew about crypto, I only knew about Bitcoin and Ethereum, and that they go up and down like every day like crazy. But in reality, some of the most interesting stuff is happening in stable coins, and stable coins are pegged against another token or another piece of value in the actual physical world. And this isn't that important for people in the U.S. whose U.S. dollar is very stable, but in other parts of the world, it's actually really, really possibly game changing, because if your currency goes up and down, like Ethereum goes up and down, or even more, let's say that it goes down to almost nothing, like it happens all the time. What if instead you could be able to have a very easy way to get paid and hold on to your value in a currency that stayed the same? And I think this was really hit home for me, because I had a family member that was visiting, or not visiting. He actually had to move from Lebanon to the United States as an economic refugee, because all of their businesses and even their like life savings and stuff ended up being stuck in one of the banks in Lebanon because of the financial and political crisis that they're having over there. And having a conversation with him and seeing how someone's life can completely be like ruined almost by the limitations of centralized authorities. A lot of it has to do with money, people don't want to like sometimes say that money is like that important. I mean, most logical people do, but there are people that will say, oh, like, this isn't perfect, so let's not even, consider it. And then they're sitting back on their like $500,000 or $100,000 a year salaries, saying that like this solution isn't perfect yet, so let's not use it. Meanwhile, people are literally like having to flee their home country and lose all of their shit because thing that may not be perfect would actually have saved them a lot. So I kind of have gone off on slightly of a tangent there, but that is some of the stuff that
Yeah.
I would say interested me about the space when I decided to ultimately, make the move into it.
Let me throw in another factor on the interest around this full stack Ethereum blog post, because there's a lot of facets here and I find it very interesting. Amel, you mentioned the global aspect and the 24-hour aspect. There's another dimension here, which is that every cryptocurrency has built into it a set of fanboys slash girls. They do. And so,
Boys, I'm happy to be a fanboy. I don't have,
okay, fair enough.
yeah.
So if you think about it, Nader, when you write a, like, let's say you're going to put out a post like, "Hey, I'm about to write full stack blog engine on AWS Lambda." You know, like who's going to engage with that content? Who's going to promote that content? Well, you have you and your immediate friends and people, sphere of influence. You have people who are legitimately trying to learn AWS, so like they're after that content because they want to build a career on that. And then you have people that work for and around and are like partners with Amazon and AWS, and that's like the people who are going to amplify and be interested in that particular piece of content. That might be a lot of people. But then when you go to an Ethereum blog post, you think about who's interested in promoting that kind of content. There's an entire third party, which is the bag holders,
Yeah,
right?
the people that are invested into that
Yeah,
community.
which,
Regulators.
hey, it is what it is. And I think it's actually,
No,
I think
this
it
is a
has
really good
pros and
point.
cons, because each and one of these companies who builds in this space has a mechanism by which they have quote unquote investors, some who are serious and some who are just riding the waves, who are basically invested in the success of that thing. And so a lot of the amplification, a lot of the noise, good or bad, I think it's both, is because we have like incentivized parties who are almost like, it's like you're the fan of a football team, like that's how much they care about these things. So it's very interesting,
Yeah.
just culturally, what's going on here.
Yeah. Those are actually fascinating points to me, because it is fundamental to how this space actually works, and it also applies to a lot of different things in the Web3 space. The idea of ownership, being an owner of Ethereum means you're part of, you could almost think of it as buying stock in something like Tesla, right, or something. You want that company to win. I think one of the main differences here is that you're part owner of, like, some token, and you might want that token to succeed, and you might, be out there like hyping it up, but you can also build like software and applications with it. You can also, do you can transact in the way that you might have in the bank with the US dollar, but you probably don't really go out there and try to have the US dollar like succeed or fail. It's not even probably an afterthought. Of course, you don't want it to fail, but like, yeah, with the cryptocurrency, you can kind of do all these different things with it, and it does provide incentives in good and bad ways. So like if the Graph token, for example, which is one of the tokens, what is, I would say, the token that the Graph network uses to make it, I would say, function. People that have bought it in a speculative way might come into one of my tweets and say something stupid because the graph went up or down too much that week or that month, and they're like upset. So you end up having, yeah, people that are either interested in the technology or they're not, and they're just speculating. And you have all these people in the same discussions in the same communities, and it's definitely different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is really interesting. So we are like, there's so much to discuss here. There's a lot to unpack. So we're gonna get into Web3, why now, all that stuff in the next segment. So we're gonna take a little break, folks. Be right back.
All right, we are officially in a
All right.
break. We can have a drink of water. We can,
Yeah, breathe. All right.
or we can just,
Controversialness like happens. Yay us. So yeah, so I think we can get into like the Web3 stuff, and then
yeah.
the why and the why now. Like the whole, like the community. Also, I want to discuss the environmental impacts that. Just keep that that in mind. We can leave that till the
Yeah,
end.
let's do that. And I wanted to speak a little bit more to the blog posts as well, and I never
Yeah, I was gonna say, should we?
came back to it myself.
Yeah,
I kept
I was
getting
gonna.
off on some other like
Do
shit.
we want to wrap up that thought? Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
my
hard to
fault
stay on
also.
track.
Sorry about that.
I helped. I definitely contribute pivots, but all good tangents. Maybe we up and then get into it.
Well, what
I
if
don't
we
know.
if we
Jerod, what
broach
do you
Web
think?
3? So if we just broach Web 3 as a topic, I'm sure in your full stack Ethereum post, you probably addressed that, right? So you can reference your post.
So
and
I
then-
have at this point, I have one post that kind of like goes into, you know, DAOs and Web3 ideas versus like what is Web3. I do have that what is Web3 post as well. I have a Twitter thread that I might make into a blog post that are talking about the drawbacks of Web3. So yeah, those are
What-
kind of like some of
what
the
in
ones that I
particular
have.
did you want to recover from your blog post that you didn't get to say?
I just kind of wanted to talk about why I wrote it and some of the repercussions of it. I would say not repercussions, but maybe some of the results of having written that and having it had become successful and stuff.
Okay. Well, we can just open up with that and then get into and then move to Web 3 and Ethereum and teach
Jerod,
those apart after that.
You want to lead us in?
Yeah, sure. I'll set that up.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
I'm typing show links. So,
Nice.
yeah. Nader, can
So
you
lots
link me
of-
to that
oh, go
thread
ahead.
at some point? Oh, I'm so sorry. Nader, do you mind linking me to that thread at some point? The Twitter
Yeah, the
thread?
drawbacks
Yeah.
thread. Yeah.
We're good? Should I ask?
We're good. Go for it. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's good. So you announced this full stack Ethereum post, tons of interest. You started working on it. What's been the ramifications or the pros and cons? What happened after that? And tell us the rest of the story.
Yeah, so the reason I wrote the blog post, coming back to that, is kind of like when I first took the role, I wanted to start off by understanding, you know, of course, how the stack works for building a Web3 app or building a DApp is what they call it, decentralized app. So I started, you know, immediately kind of diving into all of this technology, all these new tools and things like that, and even new programming language. And the first thing I realized was that there wasn't kind of a really great place for me to go and get all this information in one place. What I ended up doing was kind of bouncing all over the place. I would go to like one YouTube video and learn one thing. I would go to some set of documentation and learn a different thing. And then I would go and try to put all of these things together myself. And then I maybe found like one or two videos that tried to string them together. But the way that
you
they were
can
writing,
trying to say that you centralized this information, Nader?
I centralized this information.
Wow.
You
But, like-
centralized DApp info. Got it. Also, by the way, DApp, awesome acronym. DAP, that's like amazing. I feel like that could be in a rap song. That could be in
Yeah.
a product, you know, like an exercise. I don't
There you
know.
go,
Anyways,
Mel.
or a dance
Put DApp
move.
in a rap.
DApp in a rap, or it could be a dance
Isn't
move,
that a
you know, like
move?
you're
No, that's-
dapping. Isn't I know
dab.
what's yeah, exactly. Anyways, sorry, distract.
No, it's
To
good.
get back to your so you were looking at YouTube links and things everywhere, and then
Yeah, so I was like,
dot.
I'm going to document essentially like my learning process and, you know, find all of the most modern tooling and show people how to put all this stuff together and build a full stack app. Because like, for me, again, I was coming from the AWS Amplify serverless world. And one of the things I was always interested in is kind of like putting the pieces together and building out full stack applications. Because to me, people, when they accomplish building out something that they can actually run in their browser and interact with, it feels like they've not only accomplished something, but how they understand how all of this works together. So I always feel that that's important to put all those things together. So yeah, I put together a blog post. I talked to a few engineering teams in the space, asked them what their stack was, and you know, used that stack to create an example project, and tried to implement a lot of the most important ideas into a single blog post. So yeah, put that together, and I launched that, and it actually did so much better than anything really I've ever written before in my life. In that set amount of time, at least. I have stuff that has had more reads over time, but like in a couple of months, it had been read or watched, because I ended up creating a YouTube video of it as well, well over 250,000 times. So to me, that was really, really, really awesome. It was exciting for that many people to be excited about it, but it was also pretty eye-opening that people were that interested in this stuff. So it really was altogether a great success for me. I was happy with it, and it made me realize that people are hungry to learn this type of stuff, and let's get more people out there talking about it and doing it. So I think since not since, of course, like because of what I did, but like it just happened so maybe that I'm coming into this space at the time that other people are starting to become interested. We're starting to just see a lot more people doing stuff here in Web3, creating learning materials, creating companies, creating DAOs, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, in the last 6 months, it seems to really have been blowing up.
Yeah, there's something really getting into a growing ecosystem and community early, right? So like Rust has been kind of going through this. Node had that like 12 years ago, the first CLI and parser package Yargs, and like Yargs is the official golden standard. Like no one's made a better thing that was as widely adopted since, right? It's like almost like whoever gets there first gets to kind of claim or set the tone. And I think
Node
what's
first
really
launched, it was like there was nothing, and even Ryan Dahl was like,
nothing.
"We need packages," and so it was
Yeah,
fertile ground for anybody to get in early and lay claim, like you said.
yeah, exactly. Late claim. I think that's exactly the terminology. And so I think what's really interesting to me is that you're kind of coming in at the kind of tip of the spear, like besting background for web development, right? Like you're coming in from Ample and performant React application. For me, like someone with your background getting into this space, a full stack application, I truly feel like you probably were making something that was very unique and one of a kind in many ways. Like I don't know how many people in that space have your background or the capacity to kind of use like the latest and greatest of web tech to create a DApp, right? Yeah, I used it in a sentence, everyone. DApp, DApp.
There you go.
But yeah, like I don't know, Nader, would you say that was like
Yeah, and another thing that I think is a huge deal that maybe had a lot to do with the interest that was there was that to me, up until until I would say I started following other people in the Web3 space, I felt like the communities were very siloed. Either that, or I just was completely just unaware of what was going on. But like I could probably point to a time late last year where my entire Twitter feed for days, weeks, or months even wouldn't even really mention anything about blockchain or crypto or Web3. And that has completely changed now. Of course, I've started following a lot of other people, but I think also what that told me was that there wasn't a lot of overlap between the communities. Like there wasn't a lot of people in the React community speaking at conferences, but also building blockchain stuff. And there wasn't vice versa, people that are in this space out there being involved in the React communities, at least not a lot of that. There may have been some, but I didn't see a lot. So I think that being able to have a massive following of people and on different channels, including my blog and stuff, and just being able to expose them to some of these ideas was just probably a good mix of people that were interested and hadn't seen a lot of this stuff, and me being able to kind of like be the person to show it to them.
Yeah, there comes to mind. I'll try to find her name at some point during the show. Preeti something. She was
Right.
spoken
Yeah.
a bunch
Yeah.
she spoke at a bunch of React conferences. I think was kind of prominent in the React transitioned over into the blockchain world, but she transitioned like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It's been a while. But yeah, I mean,
Well, the other thing
so
that's happening is there's
Yeah.
more
She was kind
opportunities
of
right now
like
because there's more
someone.
use cases.
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Another thing that's happening is that there's more opportunities now, in addition to the speculation, because there's now more use cases. So we're also in a bull run for cryptocurrencies, so that's going to bring in more people, of course. But back when Ethereum first launched, you had the DAO use case, right? The ICO, so you had the crowd investment use case. There really wasn't much else you could do with these things besides speculate. And then the DeFi thing started to happen, and that's decentralized finance. And I think there's a lot of snake oil in that whole deal, but maybe it's just unregulated markets. I don't know. There's some features there for lending and stuff that's cool, maybe. And then what happened recently, in addition to the stuff y'all are talking about, is NFTs really have become this interesting, wild new use case for these decentralized networks. And a lot of people want to mint NFTs and don't know how to. And so what do? They hire somebody who can do that for them, right? So there's lots of opportunities to get involved in and around building auction houses and minting platforms. And so this is really brand new. I mean, 2020, 2021, I'm not sure how long it's been going, but the NFT thing is very real. Now, maybe it's just a fad, but it seems like a legitimate use case that's bringing lots of people to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
love
it's that the NFT is a whole different, completely, yeah, new area as well. It's one of when people are like asking like what is Web3, it's kind of hard to even explain it in like one sentence without you know sounding kind of like crazy because there's so many different things. And I think fundamentally like why is this stuff happening? Why are these new ideas being able to like start to come to fruition like right now? I think when you kind of fundamentally look at the technological changes that have happened, there really has only been kind of like one change, right? Like when the internet first came into existence and we started seeing a lot of developers building things, a lot of the reason that we're able to come to a consensus around how to build stuff and have things that all of us understand how to use, no matter where we are on the world, as for instance, like HTTP, a protocol that we can all trust that we can use and interact with without a centralized intermediary, or because of protocols that people have created that are consistent that anyone can kind of use. So SSH, HTTP, TCP, all these things are part of how the internet functions. It doesn't matter where you are. And that means we have like certain types of functionality that we can program into the internet, but we have certain types of functionality that we cannot program. The two main, I would say, things that have been enabled by blockchain technology that were not available before, that we had to make up for, were programmable digital scarcity, or AKA money, and also state. So the way that we got around that in the past was building out massively complex infrastructure to support that. So if you look
Wait,
at the
when you say
PayPal
state, what
people,
is state? Like state, as in
state is
like the
like data.
state as
Yeah,
in
like state,
state
like
organization.
saving information.
Yeah. Just want to make sure that's the state that we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, so like when you look at the PayPal founders, if you kind of listen to how they describe creating that company, it sounded kind of like a nightmare. The way that they describe all of the stuff that they had to do to get this thing functioning, they basically were saying that they think that I forgot which founder said this, but they thought that no one would ever build anything to compete with them because of how complex it was to make that a thing. So to enable digital payments, all of these millions of dollars and all of these hundreds and thousands of hours of work from thousands or tens of thousands of people, along with all this massively complex infrastructure, had to be put in place. And even then, it's still not ideal because in order to use that, you have to be an elite person, especially at first, to have used it, because you couldn't have used that all around the world. And even today, there are over 2 billion people probably that can't access it because you have to have all of these things put in place to use them. But now
Just
we
what I do
have a
now.
way to, yeah, we have a way to actually get around that by programming our own digital scarcity. All you have to have is an internet browser. You can now receive and send payments between parties. The other thing is state. So like to save information, how do we do that today? Well, we have a centralized database somewhere like AWS that if we don't pay the bill goes away forever and we lose all of our information. Maybe the data leaks, maybe, I don't know, it gets hacked, or maybe we just, I don't know. There's all types of stuff. Maybe it goes down because AWS has an outage in US East 1. But there are a lot of things that are not ideal. And I think that with blockchain technology, we've unlocked native payments and native state. And early on with Bitcoin, it kind of just showed that these types of decentralized protocols were possible, but you couldn't really write a program in Bitcoin. And I think the reason that you're seeing it start to become a thing now is that the evolution of that technology and the improvement, you've had increased transaction transactions per second, so higher latency, higher throughput per second, reduced costs. For instance, Solana is a good example of a blockchain that has, fractions of a penny for a transaction. So you have all these things that are kind of happening that are now starting to become mature enough for people to build on. That people are taking advantage of them, and the things that they're unleashing are also, I would say, really interesting to people that are developers already, but they also enable people to make money. And, in the United States, where we can make like a couple $100,000 a year for a senior developer, we might not be that interested in this stuff. But let's say you're making 10 grand as a intermediate or senior developer somewhere else in the world, and you can partake in a protocol and increase your wage by 10x, because all these projects are international and they're completely decentralized, and they'll hire anyone, anywhere. It doesn't matter where you live. It's just very, very interesting people. So yeah.
No, that is really interesting, and that's a really good segue into what I in this segment, which is Web3, right? So let's,
What is
as we
it?
can, right? What is it? What is it? And what is
Give me
particular?
more than
What
one
does?
sentence.
Yeah. Well, what does it? What is Web3 in a tweet? But also, I would say, the question is really, what does Web3 have to do or crypto, right? Specifically, if we're talking about standardized protocols, right?
Well, the first
So,
thing that I would say, beyond being able to program digital money and digital state, one of the interesting things that I kind of, again, fell in love with when I started looking into the Graph protocol itself is this idea of serverless infrastructure protocols. And when you think of serverless, it's kind of now used more of a term to describe a type of back-end solution that abstracts away a lot of the complexity and allows you to just have an API that you can interact with. And if you look at some of the writing by some of the people that I admire the most in the serverless space, they talk about this idea of a spectrum of being serverless or not serverless. So really, the first time I think that you start really seeing people talking about serverless with serverless functions, where you just have a function that you can call at any time. You don't have to like build it or maintain that infrastructure. It just runs and it scales for you, by the way. And I think that when I joined AWS and I started, started there, one of the things that interested me the most was how really great and interesting serverless technologies were. So when I started realizing that people were building out these decentralized infrastructure protocols and that tokens were powering them, that was really interesting to me, because I'm already interested in serverless. This is just kind of a more decentralized way of building serverless applications. And ultimately, I think it will be a less expensive and cheaper way for people to build these serverless services. So a really great example of this is LivePeer. LivePeer is a live streaming protocol, and at the very, very least, it's around 10x cheaper than anything else that's out there. And I've looked at some of the use cases that people are using it for, and it can be up to 100x or more cheaper than using a service from something like AWS. And the way that it works is people have the opportunity to basically run one of these nodes that does the processing of the videos on any of their infrastructure, and they make it part of the LivePeer network. And then to do any type of live streaming can basically leverage that entire decentralized network, and LivePeer will process that however the stream actually is processed. I don't know the nitty gritty like details around this, but it will basically send that processing to one of these nodes, and that node will kind of like do the work and enable that functionality using a decentralized network as opposed to as opposed to a centralized service. And the way that the people get paid for running this infrastructure is in their native token. So you have these cryptocurrencies, or AKA tokens, that power these networks. The people running the infrastructure get paid in those, and the people that are consuming them can also pay in those tokens, or they can just pay in US dollars, I believe, with LivePeer. And They can manage that processing under the hood. But the way that these infrastructure protocols typically run is via some native token, and they call it typically something like a work token, or there's other ways that people talk about this stuff. But the tokens aren't just for kind of exchange. They actually are for securing the network, for managing the network, for enabling participants within the network to kind of be part of what in the past would have been run on AWS, but instead you kind of have
Operational costs,
maybe a more efficient way of doing this.
It's all your operationalized costs. So how is that Web3? How is that an example of Web3 in action?
Well, I think it's part of Web3 because it's been enabled by cryptocurrency. It's decentralized. People are able to own these tokens. And also, like, if you are part of building one of these protocols, you're often allocated tokens. If you're participating in the community and you're building out infrastructure, you can be given part of these tokens as part of your work. And therefore, you're kind of like part owner as well. And like Jerod mentioned earlier, when someone is rooting for Ethereum, instead of like having, people, I would say, buying shares of AWS, instead, maybe it feels like they have a little bit more ownership, and they do want that thing to succeed. So you have like thousands of people that are not only working to build out these protocols and these systems, but you have thousands of owners, and it kind of creates a different type of incentive structure that is really interesting, and I think it's extremely powerful when it's actually done at scale. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. So for me, the are really decentralization, owner, more cooperative models, and localization and access, right?
Yeah, that's with the web infrastructure stuff.
Yeah. What is Web3? What's your...
My tweet is going to be out in my blog post. What is
Check
Web3?
out my blog post.
In one sentence, I would just say Web3 is the decentralized web.
All right.
And that doesn't explain it well enough for anyone to kind of like get it. But I think that the core is like decentralizing web infrastructure, decentralizing wealth, decentralizing ownership, decentralizing opportunity. So all of these things that in the past, I think that were centralized, there are ways to make this a little bit more, equitable and lowering the barrier to entry for people to participate in financial markets. Again, like DeFi, for example, that 2 billion people in the world that, can't open a bank account or even by law, if you're a woman, you can't open a bank account in like 50 countries, I think. Let's say that you're one of these people and you instead get on your computer and you start working with this DAO and you're starting to make money, and you want to put that money to work. Well, in DeFi, you can do that. You don't have to ask any person in the world to give you the opportunity to do that. You can do that yourself. And I think that's a big difference that people, again, outside of the United States and parts of Europe, maybe don't take as something that is that big of a groundbreaking like achievement, but it is for a lot of people, and I think that we're going to see more and more of those types of things in the future.
Yeah, and amen to that. Thank you.
But there's other stuff in Web3. I mean, I sent a tweet out about the reasons I'm excited. Like I like the idea of DAOs, which we can talk about later. We already talked about DeFi. We already talked about play to earn gaming. I mean, play to earn gaming to me is going to be huge. You already see Zynga and the head of YouTube Gaming and a handful of other.
No. I'm going to interrupt you because I think we kind of sort of breaked there.
Oh, okay.
And so I think we want to. But I keep that enthusiasm.
No, we'll.
That was awesome.
Yes, we'll take that up. But we're going to break right after that very poignant sentence of yours, and we'll.
Yeah, I was just like. Yeah.
We're just break. Amal and I have stopped to admire your sentence.
Yeah.
Your. One thing you haven't. We're on a break now. We're on a break now. You were batting around, or you were talking around permissionless without saying it. So I wondered if that seems like it's part of the equation here.
It's definitely something that people talk about a lot, but to me, it was hard to understand what they meant by that word. Like permissionless, does that mean like I can't use it, or like? but no,
That means you don't have
it's
to
hard
ask
to
anybody's
explain.
permission.
It's the word that they use that confuses me all the time. Like when someone
Okay.
talks about Web3, and I've even used it, but I'm now trying to kind of
Try to avoid it.
stick to more like explaining or using phrases that kind of are easier to understand, because I think that's the problem with Web3. A lot of it is just people saying these odd statements or these cryptic tweets that like don't really mean anything.
Mm.
Isn't that on brand, I would imagine, no? Cryptic tweets.
Yeah,
Anyway,
kind of is. I don't like. I've done it myself probably, but I try to
Write a
stay
blog
away from
post
it.
and link to it.
just don't accidentally tweet your secrets, you know. So Jerod, like getting into the last segment, I think we definitely need to cover DAOs, and I want to get into virtual stuff around community fears and
Yeah.
division. So Jerod,
Mhm.
any other things you want to segue on, or like?
Well, I think there's downsides of decentralization that maybe we could, since Web3 is, you know,
Yeah,
ultimately
yes,
about
but yeah.
decentralization.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
no, I think we're good. We can stick with we can come back in with what Nader's excited about, because he was excited to talk
You're really
about that.
excited about all that, yeah.
And then yeah, so we can start with that and then get into DAOs and
Yeah. Well, I think that the downside.
downside. Yeah, okay.
And then,
So
yeah. So
what
yeah.
you're excited about, and then some questions about,
Mhm.
you know.
I just have a hard stop. 25 minutes. Like I have a train to catch. I'm going to New York.
We should be done before that.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Just
Okay.
want to make sure. Okay.
Plan on 20 minutes here, tops.
Perfect.
I got a timer going. Go ahead, Amal.
Thank you, Jerod. All right. That was very poetic. That taking the lens, truly global lens, you know, where in the West, you know, we are, you know, kind of full of, you know, we have all the privilege and access in the world. But, you know, looking at countries where, I mean, I was surprised to learn 50 countries in the world, 50, like 50, you know, a woman cannot open up a bank account. That is wild.
Is that true?
Right?
I think it's
I
48.
believe it.
I think it's 48 or something like that. But yeah,
It's a,
believe
it's,
it. You
it's
know,
a shame.
by
you know,
law.
Jerod, I grew up in the Middle East. I grew up in Dubai, and Dubai, by most standards in the Middle East, extremely liberal. But I remember growing change. But I think you needed like your bank account or your husband's permission to open up a bank account as a woman. I think when I was growing up, you know, granted, like a woman like wear a bikini and whatever, but like God forbid account, right? It's anyways. So
Yeah.
so taking the global lens, clearly Web3 is you know is I think potentially a good democratizing access and all those other things you were saying, right? So that's really exciting. So can you share some of the things that you're excited about with Web3, and I'd love to also hear some of the downsides. It's not all glory
Yeah.
and good. So
I think it's important to 100% be, you know, clear about this not being some like panacea or however you pronounce that there are trade-offs. And I think that's one of the problems that you see in the Web3 space a lot of times, that people are only acknowledging the positives. And I think that is actually not a good thing. And what you end up having is people that, you know, see these discussions from the outside. Everyone is just full of crap because all they're talking about is the good stuff. So it's extremely important. And just to clarify on the number of people or the number of countries from that thing I referenced earlier, after a quick Google search, it said that there are at least 72 countries in the world where women can't open a bank account, and that was written in 2019. So yeah, I don't know the exact number, but yeah, it's
Wow.
still a problem. But anyway, in addition to kind of like some of the stuff I mentioned, yeah, I'm really interested. I'm excited about play to earn gaming. You're starting to see a lot of people in the gaming industry that are really high up, like the head of Zynga, the head of YouTube Gaming, and a handful of others, publicly talk about them starting to implement these ideas in their games via NFTs, via crypto, and maybe via some other mechanisms. But the idea is there. It's starting to kind of like when you see Axie Infinity go from almost nothing to over 2 million daily active users, $500 million a month in transactions, 95% of that money sticking with the actual users, not going to the centralized platform. It's a very compelling case, I think, for a lot of people to kind of take notice. Yeah, I mentioned accessible, stable currencies. We talked about NFTs for a little bit. We didn't really talk about them a lot. They're very controversial. I think that the fundamental technology that empowers and enables NFTs is really interesting. I'm not the type of person that thinks that selling and buying like images on a marketplace like OpenSea, which by the way just surpassed Etsy in volume, which means that a lot of other people are interested, but it's not maybe the most interesting thing to me for that use case. But I do think that what you're going to see is people using NFTs as ways to put real world assets on a digital marketplace and make them accessible to the world, just like DeFi has. So one really exciting example that I am actually diving into and trying to figure out myself and be part of if I can, are people that are doing fractional real estate. So let's say you want to be a real estate owner in New York, but you're making like 100 grand a year or 50 grand a year. You're essentially just completely locked out. You have no way to really participate in that market. What people are doing now, and it's already been done in certain parts of the world, but I think we're going to see more of it, is that people are buying a building or real estate via either a DAO or some other type of organization like that, and they're taking it and they're fractionalizing it in the form of ERC20 tokens. They'll attach that piece of land to like an NFT, and then they'll fractionalize it. And then anyone can buy and sell ownership into that piece of property on an open liquid market. So let's say you have $100, $1,000 to invest. You really think that this part of New York is going to blow up in the next 2 or 3 years based on like you living there and understanding the community. You can actually just take $100 and just buy ownership into that like in an instant, and then resell it like the next day if you want to. But also anyone in the entire world can do that. And I think that implementation of kind of like what NFTs might offer is interesting. I also think of the idea around creators and people being able to buy into a community and have some type of community ownership for a few different use cases, like fundraising, like people just monetizing their work, and things like that are interesting. So one really good example of this is this artist. I forgot his name, but I tweeted about him not too long ago. He's actually a JavaScript developer, but he created like this generative art using JavaScript, and he created an NFT collection. He sold over $3 million in NFTs over the course of like a few minutes. And he gave all of that money to the JavaScript community that wrote all of the open source libraries that he built his career upon. Now, why wouldn't he just ask people for that money if he really wanted to do a fundraiser? Well, it's kind of hard to get people to hand over $3 million. But when you give them an NFT that they can put and sell on a liquid marketplace, it provides some financial incentive for both parties. Because not only are you just handing money over to this platform or to this person, but you're getting something back in return. And if you had bought one of those NFTs at the time, it's probably worth maybe double of what you bought it for. And that's kind of like a win-win situation. Someone wants to help and participate and buy into like helping someone else succeed, and then they're getting something that they can kind of hold on to a value out of it. And I think that again, ownership, you're going to hear this idea of ownership like over and over again. That's pretty interesting to me. And another thing around NFTs is definitely the environmental impact, and I think we're going to talk about that when we talk about kind of the trade-offs and also get more clarity as to that, what that discussion is.
Right. Honestly, each one of those topics is its own episode. So with that being said, what are like good let's talk about those downsides, right? Like environmental impacts are huge. I mean, that's really what I think a lot of the division and drama and debate in our community is about. And so, can you kind of speak to that? And I'm sure there's other downsides too. I mean, I can think of like also just like. Anyways, I'll
I mean, there's a couple of areas that I'd like to highlight. And first of all, we'll start with environmental impact. And that was one of the reasons that I never really also got too interested in a lot of the things happening in this space as well. When I started actually diving into what was really going on, I did realize though that there is a huge movement within the Web3 and blockchain space for environmentally friendly consensus mechanisms. So really the environmental impact all has to come down to what is the consensus mechanism for coming to an agreement around what data is actually true or not true on the blockchain. So the original implementation of this is something called proof of work, and that's what Bitcoin is built on. And just like any technology, you have improvements over time. People come up with better and improved ways of doing things. So over the course of time, people have realized that this is not sustainable. So almost all of the newer chains that have come out are using environmentally friendly consensus mechanisms like proof of stake or proof of history, or a combination of the two. And there might be one or two other mechanisms, but like over the course of the past few years, you've had almost all of the new blockchains and all of the smart contract chains, with the exception of Ethereum, actually already running on these environmentally friendly consensus mechanisms. With NFTs being the most hotly debated topic about this, there are three main chains that NFTs run on: Solana, Ethereum, and Tezos. Now, Solana and Tezos already are environmentally friendly, and Ethereum is actually merging their proof of stake merge, which has already been kind of tested out on a couple of test networks, in the next couple of months. So at that point, you're going to have almost 100% of NFTs, if not 100% of NFT transactions happening in a way that is very environmentally friendly, definitely more environmentally friendly than packing up a piece of art, putting it on a plane, and sending it across the world. In fact, it will be more environmentally friendly to transact art digitally than physically. And there is no like if, and, or but about that. Like if anyone tries to have, like, it's just not logical. It'll be almost like having a database operation that is, a little bit more than kind of like your average database operation, but it will be to that magnitude, as opposed to now where you are actually spending a lot of, energy to do that. So NFTs, will be ultimately environmentally friendly. And the only chain that people are going to be using that is of any significance after the merge will be Bitcoin. And I personally I'm not for Bitcoin. I'm kind of against Bitcoin, and I don't like a lot of the stuff happening in that community. I don't really like the fact that most of those people don't care about the environment, and there are a lot of other people out there like me that are, feel the same way. So.
Yeah, right. You can at least, there's a choice there, right? So, and I'm glad to hear that the community is like rectifying that. What about like some of the downsides around like, no physical art, like, at least like, when you're you dispute something, there's a lawyer, there's a bank, there's a whatever, right? Like there's, there's the traceability factor, like, being,
Oh yeah.
but then there's also like downsides too, or people's wallet, whatever else. So like, what do you like? Do you see kind of a downside that's like?
Yeah, totally. I mean, people can lose all of their money, and there's nothing that anyone can do about it. That's a huge risk for anyone transacting today. And with most of these decentralized Web3 wallets, you can use something like Coinbase or another centralized wallet that is a little bit more. It's not more secure. It's actually less secure, but you have a little bit more centralization and maybe protection around those sorts of things. But if you're the average user that don't really maybe understand how some of these wallets work, and you accidentally lose your private key, for example, and you delete your wallet, there's no way to get your money back. If you give someone else your private key, either in a screenshot or however else, maybe they hack your computer, you can lose all of your money. And I think that is a major concern for people that either don't know that that's the case, or don't know how to mitigate that type of stuff. And even for experienced people that have been in this space for years, you hear people that have made mistakes, and people have been able to get their private keys and they lose their money. For example, a really popular hack, social engineering hack, is someone messaging you on Discord, and like, trying to somehow get you to screen share, and then they ask you to open your wallet, and then they kind of like screenshot something there. So yeah, that's a big concern. I think one of the ways that people are going around mitigating that is that we're building and innovating in the user experience of how to manage that, and having some form of backup, usually through some type of a multi-signature wallet, meaning that you can give access to a handful of other people, and if they all get together, they can kind of unlock something. Or maybe you have like a social mechanism where you have like your mom and your cousin or your wife or something,
like a
and
Care
all of you
Bear.
can get together to unlock it.
know about Care Bears, but Care Bears, like, when they all get together, they shoot love out of their hearts or something,
their
and then like
bellies.
Yeah,
something
yeah,
magical
yeah.
belly. There we go. Like Care Bear for crypto. Anyways, so that's really interesting. I'm glad that that's happening, and I have no happening there. It makes sense, but like it is a reality where that is a real
Oh
thing,
yeah,
and
scams. I mean,
yeah, forget crypto. Just your grandma gets a phone call from some dude in, I don't know, Central Asia who's like, "Hey, grandma, like send me a bunch of
Right.
money." Like, that happens, right? So, how are we protecting that? I mean, is there a Bitcoin police, or not Bitcoin, but like a
no,
crypto
no,
police?
there's no way to recover this stuff.
Right,
I
it
mean,
sucks.
you can basically see where it's going though, because it is all on chain. And I think there was
Right.
like some type of
There
recent
was
news where, yeah, like someone basically sent, they hacked that facility in the United States a few months ago, and they got Bitcoin, and they found those people somehow. I don't know how they did that. Maybe they tried to cash some of it out. But yeah, ultimately, if you send it to an exchange, then the exchange can kind of identify you. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, there's definitely drawbacks, and again, around kind of like the scammer type of thing. When you're dealing with any type of money, when you're dealing with ways that people can make money, you're going to automatically get people that are in it just for the money, and you're going to get scammers. You're going to have all these people all in the same discussion sometimes, and all working for the same like goals. Like, we're trying to make this thing successful, but these scammers are trying to just get rich off of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
what
like
about
you have new dynamics.
right? No, that makes a ton of sense, right? Where thievery or whatever. Yeah, not new, right? That's like since
Yeah, I mean, you can think
since
about the
humans have
financial.
wealth has existed, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had financial scams that have happened, I would say, forever. And really, the thing that you can think of is this analogy is kind of like we've lowered the barrier to entry for financial programming and financial participation. But we've also lowered the barrier to entry for scammers and people taking advantage of those people.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah,
What
that's
about
Yeah.
part of it.
privacy? That seems a concern to me. So just, if you're not doing anything wrong, why do you care? Well, maybe I don't want all my transactions on chain. Yeah. I know that there are some privacy coins and some efforts. I'm not sure if those exist in the greater Ethereum ecosystem, but like as private citizens, we don't want all of our transactions to be public on a ledger, even if they're pseudonymous. And
Mhm.
maybe you can't know who it is, but let's face it, I think law enforcement has proven they can figure out who you are with block explorers and whatnot. So, is there privacy coins in Web3? Is there any chance for that to be an aspect of this where you're transacting anonymously and privately and there's no traceability?
Yeah, there's a couple of privacy coins. I don't know enough about them. I haven't investigated them enough to kind of know whether I would use them or not. But I also think that not everyone needs to, use like crypto or Web3. I think it's more of kind of like now we have other ways to do things and other ways for, us to build applications, other ways for people to participate financially. Like if people are still wary of the drawbacks, I would actually encourage to wait until things improve, or maybe just don't use it at all. Because yeah, if you have concerns that are legitimate, that you feel are concerning, like most people probably do, I would say definitely investigate those and feel and decide whether or not you feel like the trade-offs are worth it or they're not worth it. To
Mm-hmm.
me, it's really fun and interesting to kind of be able to transact so much and so quickly, using these wallets and stuff. You can kind of trade between coins, you can do DeFi, you can buy NFTs, you can send money to people. In my DAO, I kind of like buy or not buy, I mint these tokens for free to get people into my DAO and send them to them for free for people that can't have gas. Yeah, there's all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah, there's also financial, again, of course, incentives. But again, not everyone probably wants or should participate in this stuff. So I would say like, keep an eye if you're still wary about this stuff. Like, just keep an eye on the innovations and improvements that happen over the next 6 to 12 months, and check back again with us a year from now. Maybe we'll have adjusted some of those, and maybe we haven't. I don't really know, but yeah, I definitely think that these concerns that people have are legitimate, and I would encourage people to check out my thread that I kind of wrote, maybe going into a little bit of this stuff in a little more detail, as well as a blog post that I wrote called Getting into Crypto as a Developer. I have linked in that blog post another thread from someone else that kind of talked about it. And I think he was a little bit more critical than I was. And I encourage you to read both of those.
Yeah, no, we'll link to both of those, the Twitter thread on Dropbox and then the Getting into Crypto, as well as a bunch of your other blog posts and tutorials in the show notes. Just really quickly before we get off this topic and get into DAO, talk about your real quick, or is it DAO or DOA? I don't know.
It's DAO, DAO.
DAO, yeah, DAO. Thank you. Taoism is a religion. Did you guys know that? Of course you knew that, right?
I did know that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, very beautiful religion
This,
too.
this new one kind of is too, if you think about it.
Yeah, yeah, very good. You can always count on you for the jokes, Jerod. I think you realize. Anyways, so what critics who see Web3 and crypto as a simple ploy to redistribute wealth from a few to just a different few, right? Because we have talked about, okay, at global scale, a lot of people are now going to have access to participate. In reality, it's a lot of
there's a lot of early
white
adopter.
male and pale people that are profiting, right? So how is that quo?
I think it's a little bit of both. You have people that are getting new opportunities to financially participate, and you have other people that are taking advantage of it that are getting wealthy. You have venture capitalists that are coming in and helping
honestly.
fund.
Can we don't allow them to participate? Like, can we have like a no VC allowed technology? Like, honestly, like even cannabis, cannabis is starting to get legalized in the United States and in North America as a whole, and they're just swooping in and corporatizing this, and it's like they ruin everything. Anyways,
aren't they enabling innovation though? I mean, I see both sides. Like, come on, all these things that need investment to exist. Don't they?
It is both though. Like no one can sit there and say that everything is perfect, or that that the majority of the benefits are going to people that are underrepresented or that haven't benefited in the past. But I think what is happening is that you are seeing the barrier to entry for some of these things that in the past were not there now being accessible, and people are participating in all different parts of the world and all different economic classes, and I would say some of the interesting things that I've seen personally, or especially with the Graph protocol, people that helped create and build out some of the initial infrastructure maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. A lot of these people are living in parts of the world like in Brazil and South America and other parts of outside of the United States and Europe, where from talking to them, the salary and wages there are in the range of like $10,000, $5,000, $15,000 a year. But their participation in building out this network, them getting those tokens, has made them literally wealthy. Even in the United States, they would be considered wealthy. And by participating in building out these protocols, they've gotten that. Another example is DAOs, something we'll go into in just a moment. In the past, you might have jumped into like an AWS Discord, and you might have gone into Stack Overflow, and you might have spent a month or a year of your time helping build stuff. And the only thing that you really have to show for that is maybe a few points on Stack Overflow or nothing in Discord. With DAOs, you're often given tokens for your contribution. And one of the DAOs that I am finding really interesting is called Friends with Benefits.
What does DAO stand for? Oh my God.
DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization.
Oh, okay, decentralized autonomous. Oh, so DAO, DAB, y'all have some really fun acronyms. And by the way, Friends with Benefits is like, first of all, a hilarious romantic comedy, but also it's very insinuating. So tell me about this Friends with Benefits DAO.
Yeah, Friends with Benefits is like a social DAO and they call it like Web3 creators or something like that. But like to get in early, you could have either helped participate and do stuff within it, or you could have bought $20 worth of tokens. And that community has kind of grown over the course of the last year. they've built out products, they've done events, and they've done a few other things, and now they're kind of doing their next level of growth. They've actually taken venture capital, but that $20 or that work that you had done over the course of that year is now worth a minimum of around $15,000. And it's kind of the idea of, instead of like working and participating in these social channels and not really getting anything out of it, you actually get money out of it. Now, some people are going to say, okay, like why should people, get paid for doing that stuff? Well, to me, like, I make a couple of $100,000 a year. It's not that big of a deal, but it might be a big deal, and it might be a huge deal to someone that makes that much an entire year, for them to just get that from participating in this community, making those types of, contributions that they used to do for free, but instead getting something out of it. Essentially they have ownership of that community. And I think what you're going to end up seeing with some of these DAOs is that they ultimately become like the next types of like Google, Facebook types of size companies, maybe not that big, but pretty big. And instead of it being owned by like 50% by Mark Zuckerberg or 80%, whatever, I have no idea. And then like the other like top 95% owned by like a small number of people, you have it now distributed between thousands of people that all worked equally to kind of like make that thing succeed. And that is interesting to me.
So that's fast. Come back in a few months and do a whole show on this once those are. But just real quick, before we end this, what's the barrier?
Some of the DAOs allow you to just join for free. Some of them ask you to mint some type of token, but either way, you have to have, for the most part, some type of token to get in. And the reason that that's the case is to kind of give ownership to everyone that's there, and also provide them a way to liquidate that ownership. So for a token, you can basically sell that either on like some digital exchange, or maybe like an NFT would be like OpenSea. Or some type of NFT marketplace. But yeah, most of the time you can get a token or buy a few ERC20 tokens or work for those tokens by participating in the Discord. And then you can participate in that way. For the developer DAO, which is the DAO that I created for developers, the token is completely free. All you have to do is just go to the website and mint the token. And you do have to pay the Ethereum transaction costs. And when you pay that cost, you kind of get that token sent to your wallet. And really the reason that there is any type of cost at all is to kind of have some type of way to prevent Sybil resistance. Because if this token is going to be worth money at some point, what's to stop someone from minting all 8,000 of those for themselves? Like, how do we equally distribute ownership between a large number of people? Well, there is some type of way that we can do that with minting, needing someone to mint. But what I've been doing is like actually setting aside a few thousand of my own dollars and just minting those and sending them to people around the world that can't afford even the $20 minting costs. But that way I know that that person is real and that they're kind of in it to be part of the community, and they're not just in there to kind of speculate.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, Nader, it's been an absolute pleasure, and heard a lot in this hour and change. So I want to say thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. Where can people find you online? And how can people
check
connect?
out Dabit3 on Twitter. And if you're interested in the developer DAO, it's developer_DAO on Twitter. And dev.2, I'm also at Dabit3. That's my blog.
Okay, yeah. With Dabit 2, 1, or 100 on Twitter.
Or 0.
Recently we had a fun little thread recently on like the Dabits on the web. He's Dabit3.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. It's next week. Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Just in time. Nader, thank you. This was really, really fun.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed